I'm super nervous for A&M against your South Carolina Gamecocks because of that defense scares me. But Juan over here has got friends at South Carolina, and they're saying the same thing about A&M's defense. They're super worried about this A&M defense.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like A&M and South Carolina fans are literally doing the Spider-Man meme right now. They're pointing at each other for how they feel about this game. I like A&M in this one, and I know I'm not supposed to say that, but with the broadcaster hat on, fan hat aside, I remember seeing that team up close week 2, coming off the Notre Dame game. It was McNeese State, but still seeing what Coach Elko was building, talking to some of the players just about what their expectations were for the season, knowing how much talent they had then, and watching it only get better and better and better week after week after week. We say it all the time. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. I don't think that's the case with Texas A&M. And I think that was proven against LSU. You mentioned the defense. South Carolina's defense, incredible. Up there with A&M, with Ole Miss as far as sack leaders in the country. But South Carolina's offensive line has also given up the second most sacks in FBS with just Oklahoma behind them. I think the number's at 32 at this point. When it comes to the SEC in these matchups, we talk about it till we're blue in the face. Trench play is the name of the game. If A&M and South Carolina are equal on the defensive front, I'm not sure that they're as equal on the offensive front. So that's where I give A&M a little bit of an edge, but I think it's going to be a defensive showdown. I'm not sure there's going to be a ton of points scored by anybody on Saturday in Columbia.
Well, one of the thoughts from an A&M perspective is, and Olin said it earlier in the show, is if A&M doesn't turn the ball over, A&M should win because that's how South Carolina sets up their offenses really with the short field.
When South Carolina fans this week have asked me, what is the formula for the Gamecocks to get a win? The defense scoring points off of turnovers is what I come to time after time after time. I had South Carolina's game at Oklahoma, started the game with a pick 6. Defense put 6 on the board for you immediately. They ended up scoring another touchdown. Tonka Hemingway, scoop and score. Now, Oklahoma's a very different offense than Texas A&M is, let's be honest. And Texas A&M has done a really good job as it relates to the Southeastern Conference and the numbers when it comes to protecting the football. But it's so funny. I go back to the Spider-Man meme. Whoever is at quarterback for Texas A&M, whoever has the football in their hands, hanging on to it. The same goes for Lenora Sellers and South Carolina on the other side. Lenora Sellers has been known to cough the football up a time or two. I go back to that Kentucky game. I think they put the ball on the ground 3 times and somehow came up with every single fumble. Kentucky wasn't able to capitalize on that. But talking to some of the folks around South Carolina, one of the coaches on staff said to me before the Oklahoma game, if I can just get our freshman quarterback to hang on to the football, we will be in good shape. So truly the game plan is identical, I think, on both sides, which again, makes for a great game. And Vegas says what? It's a 2. Texas A&M, I think, is favored by 2.5, which usually they're not wrong. So, I mean, if you're going to Columbia, I think we're going to get a good game either way.
Alyssa, let's talk about the A&M quarterback situation because, I think I held on to this vision of Connor Wigman for such a long time of what I saw his freshman year, which started basically against South Carolina, and then what we saw for a snapshot last year and for one game this year. But he hasn't been that quarterback this year, except Marcel Reed. Every time he goes out there, A&M wins. So, to me, it's I want this version of Connor because I think you have to be able to throw the ball the way Connor does. But Marcel just wins games, and he does it different ways.
I was talking to somebody over the weekend who does a lot of scouting and evaluating guys at the next level. And there was a comment made about perhaps Connor Wigman doesn't necessarily have the full trust of the coaching staff when it comes to key game moments, those clutch game moments. And I thought it was gutsy for Coach Elko and this staff to make that quarterback change, but man, did it pay off. There's so many different elements of this because you're right. We all went into the year going, Connor Wigman is going to wow the country. He's going to prove that he is among the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. He's going to be an early round draft pick because you'd seen flashes of it. Just hadn't been enough. And I remember going into the LSU game, I picked LSU to win the football game purely because of the quarterback situation. I said, I've seen more consistency from Garrett Nussmeier than I have Connor Wigman. And truly that was what tipped the scales for me. Now, didn't factor in Connor Wigman not being the quarterback who finishes the game. Enter Marcel Reed. It's going to be really interesting to see how they go about this on Saturday, because I do think there's a world where you could see both. You mentioned the arm that Connor Wigman has, and then what Marcel Reed brings to you from a zone read standpoint. Now, South Carolina's defense will have actually prepared for both quarterbacks, I think, in this matchup, maybe unlike what we saw on Saturday against LSU. But I remember talking to Coach Elko. We had him on one of my shows a couple of weeks ago. And I think TexAgs had put out a tweet about how much of a luxury it was to be able to have a quarterback room like this one that clearly supports each other as much as they do. You got Marcel Reed staying ready, who can go out there and win multiple football games for you while Connor Wigman was recovering from that injury. And I remember seeing that Marcel retweeted the tweet or liked the tweet or something like that. And in today's day and age, it sounds silly, but that's such an indicator of what is actually going on behind the scenes in that locker room and in that room. So it really is a luxury. And Coach Elko spoke to it. He spoke to it on Saturday night. The fact that he stayed ready, stayed prepared, and the moment wasn't too big for him. We very well could have just seen him win over a starting job at Texas A&M.
Alyssa, let's talk about those coaches, because I think both are some of the more likable coaches in college football. You got Coach Elko, who's got an approach that is, it's all business. But still, he can make you laugh. Shane Beamer's fun. And this year, I think, has gone a long way to people re-believing in him from what you saw 2 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, we had the discussion yesterday about our early SEC Coach of the Year candidate. And if the season ends now, how can it not be Coach Elko? What he's done just in this first year with, yes, a lot of talent that he inherited, but also a lot of talent that he went out and got. A guy like Nick Scorton, who they take a chance on from Purdue, who's always wanted to play in the SEC. They see enough on tape and they go, yeah, you're going to help us terrorize opposing offenses in the SEC. So I hear a little bit, I say that to kind of go off track from your question a little bit, because I hear some people saying, well, Coach Elko, inherited all of these 5 stars. But, well, he did inherit some, but also some of them came to Texas A&M because he was the defensive coordinator when he was recruiting some of those guys, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. So all that to say, what he has done in College Station has been awesome to watch. I remember talking to him at Media Days, being really excited about the vision that he had for the program. That only continued when I was there week 2. And I think the guys really buy into the personality that he has bled through this program. You can see it with the way they play. Same with Coach Beamer. And you mentioned it, 2 of the most likable guys in the SEC. I would 100% agree with that. It's hard to root against either of those guys. But this was an important year for Coach Beamer in a different sense. Just knowing that he had been there for 4 years now, knowing that this felt like a make or break season after not making the postseason a year ago. He was in some close games. I think that this is a South Carolina team that has overperformed what the national expectation was for them this season. But I think that he's got this program rolling and believing that they're a lot better than a 3-loss team that shows on their record right now. You go back to that LSU game, the Bama game. Ole Miss, they laid an egg after that bye week. But LSU and Bama, they were in those games. And I think LSU, they probably should have won that game. There were some interesting calls in that game. 2 pick sixes called back. I've never seen that in a football game before. But then to go on the road to Tuscaloosa and almost beat the Tide, it's I think speaks volumes for where Coach Beamer has this program. I don't know who's more likable. Like in the battle of the more likable head coaches we have on Saturday, they're both awesome dudes.
Alyssa, thank you so much for your time. We'll do it again, all right?
Sounds good.
Take care.